probability. In this lesson, we are going to explore how we calculate the probability, or rather so the number of times a particular event is likely to occur using probability. But here we have a question, so let's look at it. If a coin is thrown 200 times, how many times do you expect it to come up heads? Well, in order to calculate such a question, we're going to start by saying, well, what's the probability of getting heads? So P for probability, H for heads, equals, and in this case we know that on a normal coin we have two sides and one of them is heads, so it's half, 1 out of 2. Two things could happen and we're looking for one of them. And if we then want to calculate how many times our heads will come up when we throw the coin 200 times, we're going to put the probability, which is a half, and multiply it by how many times we're going to throw the coins, which is 200, and then we just solve it. We know that this is 200 over 1 as a fraction. And so we just reduce here. Our 2 will go here once. Our 2 will go here 100 times. And so the answer is 100 over 1, which is 100. So we expect to get heads. The number of times we're going to get heads is 100 times. So in other words, when we are being asked to calculate or find how many times an event is likely to occur, we first establish the probability of that event happening. And then we basically multiply by how many times we're going to throw the coin or pick the card or throw whatever to tell us how many times we're actually expecting what we want to come up. Let's use another example to explain this better. If a 5-sided spinner is spun 200 times, how many times would you expect for it to come up with the number 4? So again, we would have to first establish what's the probability of getting 4. The probability P of getting 4 equals, well, there's only one 4. And there are 5 possible numbers. So the probability of getting a 4 is 1/5, 1 over 5. So if we're going to throw this, spin this spinner, 200 times, then we know that it's going to be 1/5, 1 over 5 times 200. And whatever the answer is the number of times we are expecting to get the number 4. So again, we can just reduce here. 5 goes here once. 5 will go here, 40. And so our answer is 40 times. So if we spin this spinner 200 times, we would expect it to come up with the number 4 40 times. And that makes sense because we would expect to get the number 1 40 times, the number 2 40 times, the number 3 40 times, the number 4 40 times, and the number 5 40 times. So that altogether, that takes up the 200 times that we spun the spinner. Now, just to point out, in real life, of course, you might get the number 1 43 times, and you might get the number 2 37 times. So it's not going to be exact, but we would expect it, mathematically speaking, to get close to that number. So let's look at the third example to make sure we understand this well. Sometimes you might be given the probability already. In this case, the probability of it raining is 1/3. And we want to know how many rainy days we would expect in a 120-day period. So again, once we know the probability of it raining being 1/3, we're just going to say 1/3 times the number of times we're going to count the days, the weather, which is 120, and then we go. 3 goes here once, 3 goes here 40. So our answer is 40 rainy days. And that makes sense because 1/3 of 120 is 40. So we expect 40 rainy days. So what have we learned in this lesson? We have learned that if you are given a probability, or if you work it out and you want to then know how many times an event is likely to occur, you simply multiply the probability by the number of times you are trying for that event. Well, I hope you understand that, and the best way to prove it is to have a go at some questions. So let's see how you do.